Hello and welcome to today's webinar, where today, of course, we're looking at how to carve a niche and find opportunities and deal with super profits. Looking at, in particular, commercial conversions. That's kind of the flavor of this month here from Nimbus. So to help me work through that, I've invited a man called Dan Taylor along. Hi, Dan, how you doing?
Hi, Paul. Great to be here as always. It's always exciting being on a webinar with you.
Absolutely. That's my alarm just saying don't forget to start the webinar, which fortunately I've done. So that's useful. We're doing well. So for those who don't know Dan, Dan's believe it or not got 30 years experience in real estate, and I can't believe a man that looks so young could have so much experience, quite frankly. So he's done about 41 acquisitions. He's got about 100 million quid worth of stock under his belt, whether that's kind of owned or completed or under development. And of course, he has a mentorship and a club where he sort of consults on millions of pounds worth of stock each week. So on behalf of his club members. So investor, developer, mentor, coach, club owner, and this sort of stuff. Quite a lot going on, Dan. I suppose just kind of to help the audience get to know you a little bit. Sort of why the club? Why sort of like sort of developing, investing, kind of why sort of move into sort of the club, and kind of what's that about?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me here anyway. And two things we've really got in common: property and prop tech. You love your tech. I love tech as well. I love creating things. I'm a creator on the kind of wealth dynamic scale, and I have to stop myself half the time. But so why the club? The club was really created for a little bit of giving back, but it's really in principally for a lot of club members have said, Dan, I'm a business owner, I'm a professional, or I'm a SaaS trustee, and you know what? I love the strategies. I love how you can really force capital appreciation, but I just don't have the time. I'm never going to get around to it. I've got capital sitting there. I'm busy Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 in my job. And could I not just invest with yourself in some of your deals? And so we kind of had a thought about that and kind of loved it. It really aligned with where we're going, kind of thing. And so we morphed the club into this private members club where we basically help business owners, professionals, SaaS trustees with no time. We help them create income streams because the average millionaire in the UK has 7 income streams. And, this month we've just created 31 for private club members, which is pretty cool. We're really proud of it. It's our first ever launch in the club. And it's, and how do we do this? We do this by basically turning low value commercial property into high performance assets, hybrid assets that are kicking off a lot of capital. And how we protect our investors' money is a number of different strategies, and we'll cover that very, very soon.
Absolutely. Well, for those you can't see, I've just rolled my sleeves up. Actually, I'm sort of getting all excited. So, so Dan, should we jump into some content and let's get going with how this works? So, the first thing is how do we kind of identify the niche, I suppose, from your point of view? Perhaps take us through that, and then perhaps kind of tell us how you've applied that yourself.
Yeah, in terms of our niche, we've got a very specific niche. And in fact, some of our club members, one of our club members, in fact, found this property I'm just about to show you in our case study later on. But let's jump into the content. What is our niche? And can I share the screen just now?
Absolutely, yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully, hopefully you can see that.
We can, yeah.
Yeah, cool. We'll just pass by that one. So some of these strategies are quite powerful, and indeed, in the past, we've managed to double and triple, values of property, and they could be hybrid schemes, pure commercial schemes, or residential on the uppers. This is a pure commercial one. This is actually a business acquisition, trading business acquisition, and we tripled the value. This one here was more of a standard shops and uppers. That's it didn't look like this when we got it. It was ugly.
I've seen the photo of that. It's very different, yeah.
And we turned it into this, which is quite nice. And that was unbelievably a 10x value. These are true figures. I still can't get my head around that actually, but that is a real life true story. This one here was a Palfrey doubling. It's in Paisley in Scotland, but it's it's quite exciting what's going to happen to that one. It's right now it's got a double, maybe even a tripling value, to be honest. But it's going to go from £150,000 value to about 8 million, and we'll show you that a little bit later. That's one of the things we do. So in terms of, this is our kind of model that we follow. If you're doing anything in life, you need a kind of a roadmap, a model, if you like. And this is our one. Now, we don't have obviously enough time to dive into all of this. So what we're going to do is pick a few sections and then go into that. And then at the end, we'll maybe we'll maybe make you an offer that you can come on a free webcast. We'll maybe dive a little bit deeper if this is for you. So let's jump into this. Paul just asked, what's our niche? How do we find our niche? What do we do? Well, our niche starts with this. Right now there's kind of I call it PD fever, and it's everything between 100 and £1 million. A lot of people are after that stock, and quite rightly so, because PDP, PN, MA is an incredible opportunity for us all, and we really should be, taking this advantage just now. There's other larger demographic and economic factors at play as well. Why this decade will be the kind of the decade of deals, if you like. But really, it starts with this. This is the accelerant on the fire. PD, Class E, MA is fantastic. So where do we play? Where do we play in this whole schemes? Well, we like to go with kind of schemes where we've got a GDV of £10 million plus. And why is that? It's because the air is thin there. Usually it's relational based, i.e. creating a relationship with funds, or you're creating relationships with national agents kind of thing. And we like to play there because for us, it's hard doing a smaller deal. That is doing a larger deal. And, and sometimes, to be honest, the margin's a little bit bigger. We'll talk about that really soon. Who do we like to buy from? We love to buy from big funds. Why is that? Well, if you think about what's just happened, the black swan of the pandemic has created havoc in the market. And big funds, like the case study I'll show you today, let me just give you the figures on that in terms of from a vendor's point of view, from the big funds, pension funds point of view. They were bringing in about 650,000 on this asset. The black swan hit, COVID created rampage for everybody, as we all know. Their 650 went down to 410,000. How did that happen? All their offices became vacant. Yeah. So upstairs, 3 stories upstairs, all vacant really, really quickly. Took their 650 down to 410, but it doesn't stop there, because then there's empty, there's vacancy rates.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, there's rates, there's insurance, there's service charge. This all has a negative effect on the commercial. Commercial income on the downstairs is 410, but now they're kind of sitting at 200,000. They've gone from 650 to 200,000, which is pretty incredible. So that's a massive shift. And COVID has really had big funds thinking, okay, these assets have been core for a very long time. Now, what are we going to deem core? And then we're going to deem the ones that need reprofiled, repurposed as non-core assets. Let's get rid of them. Let's have a deep cut, and let's exit those assets.
And I guess if you're a fund and you're judged based on your ROI that you can kind of create, when you've gone from 650 down to 200 grand net income, it's suddenly crucified your return on cost. So actually, your ROI, which means then if you can sell that at a sensible price, or even at kind of reasonably knockdown price, then you're going to be protecting your fund and your figures going forward, because that's how you're going to get judged and how you're going to get paid as well.
Yeah, and given the fact these assets have been written off years ago, and they've had a massive income stream out, and their net contribution right now is probably about 200 grand, maybe 250 on this one, but from 650 to 250. Now, it's very, very easy for them to say to the board, like, we've gone from 650 to 250. Some crazy dude over here is going to give us 4.9 million. we should take it and run, and that makes a lot of sense from them. So taking a deep cut, or which might even be a profit for them, but taking a deep cut once is easy for them to then move that capital into what other income producing assets. They're kicking off 2, 3, 4, 5% kind of thing. That's what they want. They're retreating to London, and we want to take advantage of this. So this is kind of where we live. This is what, want to create big relationships with kind of 5 big funds, 5 national agents, and really kind of roll this out kind of thing. So that's where we are. We're not saying that's where you should be. In fact, if you don't have experience, you really should start off with a smaller deal, or bring on a lead that has the experience, that can deliver these kind of projects, has the technical expertise and that project management expertise. Because there's a lot of moving parts in these things. There's a lot of professionals involved, and you have to lead from the front towards a common goal kind of thing.
But Dan, how did you kind of stumble across that niche? Kind of how did you kind of identify that as the place you wanted? Did you kind of stand back and look at the marketplace and say, right, that's where I'm going to go after, or was there something else involved?
Well, it's really from the point of view as our mission is really to create 10,000 homes to rent and create communities, and really kind of change the game of how we live, work, and play kind of thing, and also invest to create income. So with that in mind, we want to create communities of preferably 50 to 100 units. And we have one under ownership right now that we're going to be doing. That's in Scotland. This one's in the case study we've got today is in Guildford in Surrey. So worlds apart, but the same kind of thing. So we're looking for larger projects. Therefore, there's a minimum GDV to make everything kind of tick. The GDV on this one is kind of 14 million, could even be 15 million, to be honest, because of the commercial aspects. You never know about the commercial aspect till you're into serious depths of negotiations with them, but it's quite an exciting space. So that's kind of
question actually done. There's a question in the chat that we'll perhaps come back to later, but a question from Bengt is saying that sure the fund will just sell in the open market, so that will price in all or kind of any PD uplift as kind of a premium for the buyer to pay. Is that your experience, or are you finding that the funds are more interested in kind of the proceedability of the buyer and the track record of the buyer rather than necessarily trying to get the highest price? And so I guess they're pretty well advised, so they won't need to go on the open market, not like councils, presumably.
This was on the open market, to be honest, and it was on the open. We seen it 2 years ago. The price was 7.6. You know, so the numbers didn't work at that level. We did the full analysis, and the numbers were kicking out at 5.5, kind of thing. So a year later, this is like a year ago, just now, last summer, one of our club members brought the deal back to the table, and you know, and it was high fives. And it starts to get a little bit interesting when it's coming into our kind of parameters kind of thing. So high fives, we then went back in because the club member brought it to the table, and really they wanted a kind of deal fee. We agreed to pay them a deal fee if we complete this deal. It will complete in October. They'll get £74,500 for bringing it back to our attention, which is great for them. Poor reflection on me because I never had it in my funnel to keep in touch with. But you know, a club member is going to be over the moon. So in terms of it's kind of space we want to live in and grow, and you don't need many of these. As we'll show you later, the kind of profits that's potentially involved. These are projected numbers, as we've not done it yet, but we've actually added a lot of value without even owning the asset as such. Yeah.
Sure.
So, yep. So in terms of you know, moving on to other aspects in terms of, you know, how do you find these things? Well, we're very much in the trying to turn a push, you know, push marketing. When you're going knocking on doors, that kind of thing, we're trying to turn that into pull marketing. And, you know, and it's very much, we do social media every day. We do email marketing, we do hybrid marketing, and, you know, we do emails, we do mail, snail mail, and we also do lumpy mail, which we absolutely love. Lumpy mail we've used since, I think it was 1996, our first campaign.
What's lumpy mail, Dan? I've got this feeling of like or something sent to the post, or like cakes to the post, something like that, I don't know.
Yeah, just whatever. Like somebody was asking me about what they should be doing for lumpy mail recently, and they're slightly higher up the demographic and value chain. And I said, you know what you should do? This would be a great thing. Send them a box of Ferrero Rocher, like, you know, 9 Ferrero Rochers or something. And this is really high value stuff they're doing. And why don't you put a little story in it? You know, my mama, you know, remember Forrest Gump? My mama always used to say, life's a box of chocolates and you never know what you're going to get. But with us, you get the same experience time and time again, just like Ferrero Rocher. That's lumpy mail.
Lumpy mail is kind of sending a sort of present through the post kind of thing, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and it's all to do with one thing. It's just like social media, you're trying to stop the scroll. Lumpy mail, you're just trying to get their attention, you know, and that's all it's to do, get their attention to read your letter or make the call or whatever. That's all it is. It's a pattern interrupt kind of thing.
Sure.
And, you know, and being in their mind, that's really the key. Yeah.
Sure.
Cool. And so moving on from there, I think we talked about relationships, and for us, you know, we kind of want to be in the high value kind of areas. We want to be 15 to 50,000 square feet. That's the kind of KPIs. We want to be 5 to 10 minutes walk to the train station. We want to be under an hour to central London if it's down that way, or other KPIs if it's up in Scotland and whatnot. And but we do love under 40 minutes to London. The case study we'll show you today is 39 minutes to London, 5 minutes walk to the train station. Train station's been regenerated about 200 odd million pounds. And over and above that, there's 300 units getting built in the back of us in about 3 years' time. So very much on the upswing, and it's a stockbroker's belt, cobblestone streets. It's just a wonderful, wonderful area and a wonderful property within that area kind of thing. Sure. So that's what we're kind of looking for. Anyone finds them, you know, give us a shout, and it could be a deal fee for you.
This kind of Nimbus webinars, haven't you, in terms of that attraction?
Absolutely. And LMS, what is LMS? This is the key thing, and is one of my failures on this deal. LMS is last man standing, and it's usually the first or the last person at the table gets the meat, if you like. And on this deal, the case study we'll show you today, one of our club members brought it back to our attention, and we thought it was not cool if we didn't give them a kind of deal fee, if you like. So we kind of agreed that up front. And in terms of the tools we use to do all this, we use hybrid tools. As I was touched on, we use email, we use lump mail, phone calls to follow up on. Obviously, we use Nimbus, we use CoStar, and for buying businesses, that kind of thing, because this is an untouched market where businesses are for sale that sometimes already own their own commercial property. And one of the sites we'll show you today, we found on a business selling website, been sitting there for over 2 years. We went in, picked it up, and it's going to be repurposed into 70 brand new student accommodation units. Now, that is a really good strategy. For that, what we use is Endel. We search on businesses for sale, but we also go direct mail via Endel. Endel scrapes a company's house with financial data and whatnot, and then you can export that and then do direct mail to businesses that are pretty much not for sale. And why is that important? Because you're in thin air. Nobody else is looking at it because they've probably not even thought about it. So that is all about last man standing. It's about the follow up and sending them another letter every 3 months, and it could be 3 years. And over that 3 year period, or 2 or 1 year period, things change in people's lives. That there's a life event, and at some point people start to think, or after your 5th letter, they start to think, maybe we should have a chat with this chap. He's quite persistent. Maybe we should think about selling. But we always match age as well with the financials we're after for businesses for sale. Yeah.
So that kind of the principle of that then, Dan, is really kind of trying to find businesses where you've got the sort of the freehold assets in the business, maybe they're trading out or something like that then are kind of valued at a price that you could then redevelop and change or add value to or something like that, or kind of they're undervalued, something like that, sell and lease back and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Potentially relocate the business into leasehold premises or somewhere, because usually these kind of businesses have been around for a long time, 10, 20, 30 years, and they are older, unsophisticated vendors that don't know anything about property. And the town's built up and things have moved on, and really the business district is kind of moved away, and they can be reprofiled into something else. Just give you a real live case study. One of our club members bought a business, 1.6 million. It was a metal plating business, so really kind of old school. And where the property was, we helped them come up with 2 strategies, did the numbers for them. One was a residential scheme and one was a pure commercial scheme. So the residential scheme was, let's low-hanging fruit convert what's already there. So it's easy, because he's never done one of these before. Says, look, just convert what's already there. But let's look at the other scheme. The other scheme was a commercial scheme. And they both came out with about the same kind of profit. And I said, he asked me, which one would you do? I said, well, it's a no-brainer. You do the commercial, because all you're doing is popping 2 trade counter tenants in there on a 10-year lease, and then relocate the business, sell the business, and you've got the property for free, or sell the property and you've got the business for free, whatever floats your boat, kind of thing. So it's all about that, and we use Endel quite a lot for helping us scrape that data, get the right age for the directors, get the right kind of net asset values and all the right sectors, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, cool. So let's move on. In terms of forcing capital appreciation is all about strategy. And for me, the number one strategy when you're starting out is investor protection. And why is that? Because rule number 1 is obviously return of capital before we talk about return on capital kind of thing. And then one of the ways we do that is we always target, or try and always target, cash flow day 1, somewhere that there's already cash flowing, there's tenants in place, paying rent, hopefully, which is not always the case during COVID, obviously. But the case study we'll show you today, day 1, the rent's going to be 410,000. For the pension fund that's selling it, their net take is 250, but the day we go in, we're going to be netting out at 410. And that's because the upper's already vacant. And when we move in, we're going to have the strip out works contractor ready to go. So we're straight into strip out, therefore there's no vacancy. costs, no rates at all. Yeah, which is really, really important. And that de-risks the kind of the project for investors. And because we're in this for the very long term, and we always look to, want to look after the kind of investors, first, second, and third kind of thing. And I suppose another key thing is baking in profit, when you buy. For us, that's, critically important. And we'll show you the case study today. Is started at 7.6 million. And then it was high fives, remember, a year later. We went into legals at 5.4. So 7.6 to late fives, into legals at 5.4, and unconditional at 4.9. So, so 5.4 into legals and 4.9 unconditional. So that is kind of baking in value. So the price is going down. Meanwhile, we've got a delayed completion that appreciates the value. So we're, we're baking in value with the price through our negotiation kind of strategies when we buy. And how we do that is we use the professionals as assets. So we don't mind. The next point is obviously risk capital reduction. We don't mind spending some money at the front end to get a defensive and then later an offensive valuation. So a defensive is something that you use potentially against the vendor to arm them with the tools necessary so they can go to the board and not look bad. Yeah. Sure. So it's really not for you, it's for the vendor to go to their board and get approval for what you're trying to achieve here. Yeah. And then we get another valuation that's used as an offensive kind of valuation, for the funding, for the finance. Yeah. And the value and the differences are incredible. Not on this deal, but on another deal I've just done. We had two valuations. One's at 4 and one's at 6 million for the same stuff, 2 properties. Is that incredible? But it was a real reason why. We'll touch on this later. It was a CGT issue. The reason why I got the second one at 6 million, and then the bank obviously got the first one at 4 million. So why is that difference? Number one is indemnity. How much indemnity they're putting on the line, and who are they giving the indemnity to? They're a little bit more comfortable providing me with indemnity at 200 grand than the bank at 2 million. So, there's a lot of that at play as well, and that down value stuff. So, but anyway, to talk about risk capital, before that, sorry, deal structures. What the way we prefer deal structures, obviously there's options. There's this kind of, the cheapest one is going to be a cash purchase, but what we like is exchange, deposit, and then a delayed completion. Why a deposit, which everybody hates? Well, it proves performance. It proves your ability to perform, your commitment, your feet to the fire. And when you're dealing with these kind of funds, you need to put some skin in the game, I'm afraid. And so it's not for everybody. But we like to do that because we can get in control straight away, show proof of funds, on this one, £500,000 down, and away we go. We've got 9 months delayed completion, which is great. And in that time, we'll increase the value with the planning aspects. And yeah, so that's kind of what we do in terms of risk capital. What is risk capital? It's the money that you spend when you don't know if you're going to get a result before you get to legals kind of thing. And that is the part you really need to mitigate. It's investors don't bear this, you bear this yourself. And it's part of the, I suppose, skin in the game, I suppose, to show your investors what you've invested already to date. And, it's the whole team, but it's your core front, your core front deal team, your solicitor, your planning specialist, your architect, because you've got to draw the scheme. You've got to make sure not only it's a great scheme and profitable, bring your analyst on board, but it also has to be deliverable. And sometimes PD schemes aren't deliverable, and there's various reasons for that. It could be daylight, sunlight, it could be noise. It could be you can't actually deliver the scheme because you can't get the contractor on site. There's nowhere for them to put their stuff and whatnot. So you have to make sure you have somebody that has experience in these kind of things before. Another great thing about, I suppose, risk capital reduction is, and again, this goes to, I suppose, performance as well, as our solicitor knows all these people in the funds, the big funds, known him for 20 years, and he deals at a very high level. He does corner shops to billion-pound deals, and he's done over 10 billion pounds in deals. When you have a solicitor like that working for you, that already has a connection in these funds, already knows the people at senior levels, then that credibility is already there. Yeah, he's built it for you kind of thing. So you're already in the door and they're taking you seriously. Now that's really, really important. And we help people in the club introduce them to all our deal team as well, depending on what they need at the time. Um, and when you're working with these professionals, you got to share. I suppose you got to sell the vision at the start. And if you're at the start of your journey, or you shortcut the whole thing, and get involved in people have already done it before, already built up that dream team kind of thing. And you got to think about obviously your risk capital at the beginning. How can we share that with all the professionals? Can we give them can you agree a abortive fee up front? Can you agree a success fee? Can you agree a fee that's staged over a kind of time period so that your cash flow is maintainable to reduce risk to who? Investors, because they're number one. Yeah.
Sure.
And moving on to planning strategy, again, it's back down to the team. Your team is absolutely critical. You got to engage them early. Planning specialist, solicitor, QS architect, engage them all early. Why? Because you want to, it's risk mitigation. Everything I talk about here, we're forcing capital appreciation, we're mitigating risk. It's all to protect investors, because your investors are your fuel for the whole journey, not one deal. Yeah. And it really helps them when they see you putting these kind of strategies in place. So, numbers, if that's not your bag, get somebody in. Whatever you're not great at, and be honest with yourself, bring somebody in. Yeah, bring someone that's 10 times better at doing that specific aspect, and you become like the conductor of the orchestra. You become the project manager, almost kind of thing. You have to be commercial. You have to understand that aspect, because most of your professionals are in a very, like your architect, your QS, your structural guy. They don't understand the commerciality of the whole scheme. So you need to own that bit. It's really important to understand the strategies, the commerciality, how the whole thing fits together. And when you're making decisions, what's the impact of that kind of decision? But use your team to do that. They bring you the information, and you make the overall kind of decision.
Sure.
And so I suppose this leads me on to the base case. This is really, really important for planning, to make sure, especially PD, MA, Class E, PAN notices, you need to make sure everything stacks up on your base case. Now, what's your base case? What you can actually deliver after you brought your kind of town planner on board. What can we get here on the PD, low-hanging fruit kind of thing? And make sure your numbers stack on that basis. Yeah. And then obviously we always go for full planning as well. And that's really the accelerant. That's where we really force some huge capital appreciation. If we can get, base case, get all the numbers, make sure they work on that. And then secondly, on top of that, we've then got that accelerant to go for the kind of the best case, if you like. And that's what we kind of do. It's a kind of, it's a dual approach. And we treat everything as a full planning application, because it almost is anyway. You're dealing with daylight, sunlight, potentially transport issues, noise issues, actually the construction of the project issues, structural integrity, load bearing, flexibility of the structure, depending on what you're doing. There's a whole host of things you've got to be in there. So you might not get your best case. On the case study, our base case is 13 units, which is easy to deliver, under PD. And MA actually. MA just come in 1st of August. But as a backup to that MA, and where that came in is we've got 3 stories upstairs. One's a yoga studio. So they needed full planning to go from an office to a yoga. We needed full planning to go back from a yoga studio back to an office. But as soon as 1st of August, so we submitted in January a full planning application just for that piece, just in case there was an issue with MA on the 1st of August. So it's kind of a back in that protecting your investors. That was like, belt and braces kind of thing from our point of view. But it's really, really important that, and, for us kind of going forward. And I suppose another thing as well is, really important thing is really early on, if you really want to go for your best case, engage interested parties really early on and treat them as assets. Now, this is like the Guildford Society, Guildford Vision, and all these kind of parties. There's like 7 of them. And why? Because they've probably lived there for decades. They've got more experience of the local area, what can do, can't do, their vision for the place. And they'll have been on many committees with the planning, the councillors. So it's really, treat them as an asset, treat them with respect, and you'll gain a ton of information from them that will hopefully create a more holistic win-win for the project going forward. They've been invaluable in terms of helping with the design on this thing. And
they even quite hard work. Well, if you kind of get the wrong side of them, they can make life quite difficult as well, can't they? So actually, engaging
100%.
them and going to help their vision become a thing, sort of, does create life be easier, make life easier, isn't it?
Yeah, we want them to say that was our input there. We made them, reduce or set back that balcony, or we need. One of them wanted to make the actual entrance of the building look like a residential entrance instead of just being slapped on the top. What can we do here? We work with their architects to try and actualize that vision, and so it's been fantastic. So they bought into the whole process, being part of the creative design. And it's been great. It's been a fantastic experience. And we always do that on kind of every project. On the student thing, it's the same thing. We get early engagement, early buy-in, and it's invaluable. It really is. And see the introductions they can make. Again, it's because they've been there. They're part of the infrastructure, you know. So in terms of the next point, strategy stacking, it's quite an in-depth kind of area. So we'll maybe go over it pretty quick. So I suppose the first part, residential. The key thing for us in residential, back to that return of capital, investor protection. First question always pops into my mind. How do we get the uppers for free? Yeah, so how can we buy this in such a way where we're paying £0 per square foot for the uppers? Now, when you're starting with £0 per square foot and you're dealing with exit values at 510, maybe construction costs of a blended, £145 a foot, because we've got some conversion, some new build, it's not hard to make a margin there. So that's my first question. Where do we need to get to? So we like to buy at a kind of 9. We bought this at a 9.1 cap, I think it was. Now, when you're buying at a 9 cap, and if you can extend the lease, we're going into commercial slightly here. But yeah, let me come on to the commercial in a second. If we can buy at a value where we can sell the commercial and get our money back, we've effectively got the upstairs for free. Yeah.
Sure.
Now that's, at the end of the day, that's really, that's critical for us, because if we're then for free, it's hard to, mess things up kind of thing. Now, I suppose. And then along the way as well, you've got this old thing called inflation. So make sure your QS is not a one-stop shop at the beginning. Make sure he's running the model. He's updating the model as we go forward. We've seen some 10% increase in cost, in concrete, steel, timber, that kind of thing. We've also seen the exit values right now are not 510 anymore. They're actually 560, which is quite nice. Yeah. We haven't booked that in though. Into the model. We book the increase in costs, we never book in the exit values. What the valuer said as well is from now to when we sell, which would be 18 months, they'll probably go up another 13 to 15%. Now that's crystal ball glazing, nobody knows, but it's an assumption he's made kind of thing. So we always go base case, what's the numbers, and any asset price inflation, we don't book that in, but we book in the cost price inflation kind of thing. On the commercial aspect, we kind of look at trying to protect ourselves from a big cat attack. Now, what is the big cat attack? CAT, correction, Amazon, and technology, because whatever can be done online will be done online, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on what side of the street you are on that one. So we look for what's called essential daily spend. We look for demand, but most importantly, it's essential daily spend. Poundland's very much definitely, and they're one of the tenants, which we'll come on to in a second. They're very much definitely in that space. And CEX, the kind of gadget shop, is for me, is not in that space, but Poundland's most definitely are. Poundland's paying 260, CEX are paying 150. So 410 coming in total. So what is this kind of strategy in the commercial? I'll come on to it in a second, but in a nutshell, what is the strategy? Strategy is this: buy at a 9 or 10 cap and sell at a 6 cap. Now, what does that mean? It really means, let's keep it really simple. A 10 cap. A 10 cap on 410,000 is actually 4.1 million, yeah, because it's 10%. Now, if you're buying at 10% and then selling, let's keep it really simple. We will not be selling at 5 cap, but it's easy for the numbers. If we're selling at a 5 cap, that's a 20 times on the rent. So you'll be selling at 8.2 million. We're not going to sell for that, just to be crystal clear. Probably going to sell for a 6 cap, I would imagine, after what we do. And how do we do that? We'll come on to that, but it's really, it's SAM, it's simple asset management. That I kind of love. You can make as much in the commercial if you're buying the right kind of commercial at the right price as you can make in the residential. Both together, you've got both sides of the coins. You can really turbocharge your kind of profits going forward, which is, so we like to target shorter leases, believe it or not, which a lot of people run from. But as long as we're targeting shorter term leases where the tenant is pretty strong, like Poundland, 900 shops, and also the tenant sector is essential daily spend, then we're quite happy with short-term leases, because when you extend the lease, you increase value. I know this is kind of commercial side of things, but if you could get your head around both sides of resi, all we're doing is, we're trying to buy for £0 per square foot, spend £150 a square foot, sell at $5.10 a square foot. Yeah, that's kind of the plan there. On the commercial, we're trying to buy at 10 cap and sell at 5 cap. So we're forcing capital appreciation. Yeah.
Sure. I think the other kind of thing that's kind of useful with that as well, if you've got kind of some sort of lease in place or some kind of short-term income in there, that it's kind of, it becomes very clear what the thing's worth. And so because you haven't got vacant possession of a building, you can't say, well, actually it's got these PD rights and therefore it's worth more. And, and this sort of premium that can be priced into some of this stuff. And so actually you've got that kind of short-term income. And often with these kind of slightly strange buildings where you've got upper parts with retail or whatever it might be, often those retailers don't want that space anyway. So kind of a conversation with them about changing what they want, and all these retailers kind of with their worlds turned upside down and managing different channels for their sales and things. That's quite an interesting discussion to have. And you've got a sort of a seller that's being advised, well, you've got a lease in place, and therefore you haven't got this opportunity to change it yet. So it's kind of interesting, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And see, the other thing as well, Paul, what I love about this hybrid strategy approach is the fact that most people don't like commercial, or they just don't understand it, and they've never spent the time to get the head around it, I suppose. And therefore they kind of steer away from these things. That looks far too complicated. Imagine dealing with a £1 billion brand. Sack that, not for me, thank you very much. So imagine on a simple strategy here, we don't want to get our hands dirty. We buy this wholesale, we split it into the component parts, we sell off the uppers to a developer, with the planning gain, and then we re-gear the leases downstairs and sell that off as well. I mean, as soon as you get your head around how you buy these things right, the buying journey, it's not a one-off conversation, it's a journey. And as soon as you get your head around the commercial side of things, what's a good tenant, what's a bad tenant, how do you know if somebody's going to stay there? There's a whole lesson in itself, to be honest. And how do you get in touch with them? How do you deal with them? If you can learn those two things, you could package these things up and sell them to different parties, and obviously benefit from the title splitting as well, which is, we'll come on to that in 2 seconds. So that's a kind of a very, very high level overview. And one of the key things that I love is something called tax. And it's very much part of our overall strategy, because it can, again, it's a hedge, it de-risks things. Now let me just, we haven't got time to go into fund, unfortunately, so I'll rush past that one. So tax, everybody hates death and taxes. Nobody likes this, but I kind of love it. Why would I love this? What is wrong with me? Well, number one, on this case study, just on 3 strategies: SDLT savings, capital allowances, and title splitting. Just on those 3 strategies, we're adding another £875,000 of value to this deal. £117,000 we're saving on SDLT through one of the reliefs that's written in the tax book. £500,000 of capital allowances will be crystallized on this property, because the big fund have crystallized most of them, to be honest, but there's about £500,000 left. Now, if we crystallize that in an LLP, that basically means we can have £500,000 of income without any tax at all. If we crystallize in a company, then obviously it's a benefit of £95,000 of corporation tax relief. And then obviously you've got to get the money out if you want the money yourself. Sure. So it's a different value depending on what structure you use. And then the other thing is an additional £250,000 of value with something called SDLT, which is that SDL strategy, that's NDR, basically, multiple dwellings relief we're using on this one. There's about 20 odd different SDLT strategies, but that's the one that's most effective on this kind of property. It's a hybrid scheme. But the other thing on VAT You really got to get your head around that. Really, really important, because what happens if a property's back register and you don't know the right strategy and you have to pay VAT on top? Or if you understand what a TOGC is and how to apply that, then you don't have to pay VAT on the purchase price of a property, which is quite nice. So there's a huge potential saving. That's like another £1 million, but you shouldn't be paying it. So you just got to understand, how do you do that, and who do you use to actually implement that strategy. The SDLT, we've talked about that, and on this property we're going to show you in 2 secs, 117,000 capital allowances, basically a relief that's there. And you need a professional to put this together for you, but the savings can be enormous. The biggest one I've done today is 2.2 million on a deal, 2.2 million capital allowances. So imagine crystallizing that in your LLP or partnership, and you've got 2.2 million of income going forward where you can take without any tax at all. It's quite, these are super powerful kind of strategies to aid in those super profits when you kind of start to kind of strategy stack, as I call it, and you start getting that kind of compounding benefit kind of thing. So moving on to this, title splits. What is a title split? We're going to show you in a second in a picture format, because it's easier to get your head around. And then when we do that, I'll come back to the numbers on this, and we're not going to go through them. We don't have time, so apologies. Corporation tax, my goodness, that's a whole session. CGT, let me just tell you one thing about CGT. Great area to save money. We've just moved 2 assets from an LLP into a company to rebase the values, and going from 1.3 million to 6 million. So 1.3 million was the purchase, or the cost consideration for the 2 properties. We've rebased them at £6 million now, which means we can sell them for £6 million and there'll be no capital gains tax whatsoever, which is a saving of £940,000. So absolutely critical to get your head around that if you already have property, and everything that entails within that kind of thing. IHT, absolutely. Just recently, actually, HMRC have given the green light. Well, they actually had a very specific department they set up to investigate IHT pieces or IHT structuring. One of them in particular was the Family Investment Company. And after 18 months, and Lord knows how much money they've spent looking into this, they've disbanded the special group and announced that family investment companies and a few other things are now fine. They fit within what their determination or their interpretation of the tax code is. So that is really important to, we did our CGT piece to rebase the values, and our second step is putting that IHT piece on the back of that as well, which could be a trust, could be a SAS pension, could be a Section 86 trust, discretionary trust, could be a family investment company. But where do you go to ask the right person? In the club, we've got a professional, our one-stop shop for kind of tax, who's a great guy, really, really good. So really important to get your head around these kind of things. And let's jump in quickly. How are we doing on time, Paul? Are we okay?
We are running a bit short, but let's keep going. Perhaps we do another sort of 3 or 4 minutes, if that's okay, and then we'll
yeah. So quickly going through this case study, and we'll touch on the title splitting and what kind of money that created there. So this is in Guildford. Sorry, there's the building here. It doesn't look like this just now. And you see the 2 additional floors up here that we're proposing. Now, remember I said the base case? Well, the base case is 13 within the existing 3-story structure upstairs that have been kindly vacated by the office users in that environment. Here on the first floor, remember here on the first floor, we have a red hot yoga studio. And remember, we had a full planning application to turn that back to office, then PD from office to resi. Well, obviously on the 1st of August, because it went through MA, we didn't need to do that, but it was a kind of backup belt and braces approach. So that's the first floor there. Poundland has the last 2 windows over here on the first floor. And then the rest, we can fit 13 apartments in here. So this is our base case that we knew, 100% knew we could deliver this, which is really, really important to get that base case and have all your numbers done on your base case. The 2 floors above, and there's a single story or 2-floor extension at the back as well, we'll show you in a sec. That is all the best case. That's full planning, PD plus full planning. And let's just show you what that looks like. So here it is here. We're kind of, as advice from one of the interested parties, we've tried to make this stand out here. This is a residential entrance here. to make it look more like a separate kind of thing. And I think the results and this setback as well, we actually blocked the whole thing here with a view. You know, we put this in actually knowing we would do this, but we wanted to get some, you know, we want to get some feedback from these interested parties. So we put something ugly so they could shape it and take ownership of the whole thing. And it's come to this setback, balconies upstairs, looks fantastic. This is what it looks like today. You see the red hot yoga, beautiful studios. Timeland's up here as well. Not the best, but what a transformation. So, you know, this is creating super profits, but it's also creating multiple passive income streams for investors. And it's also creating impact in the local environment, the local community, which is really, really important. And this is to the rear. This is a residential on the upper. So there's the 2 floors upstairs that we're going to be creating. And I think it looks great. And to the rear, we see the rear here, we've got a roof garden. Now, with COVID in mind, we've tried to create as much outside space as possible so that the kind of design is kind of baked in with outside space, should anything like that, hopefully not, but should it ever happen again. So we've got balconies the full length on these ones. On where we can't have a balcony, we've got Juliet windows across here, which obviously you can open your windows, but you can't pop out. And then we've got a full roof terrace up here, you know, for people to enjoy the outside space, which is really pretty cool, I think. And this is back to back to title splitting. What is title splitting? Visually, let me just show you in literally 10 seconds. We're going from a typical 3-story building to, and this is all we're doing. We're creating individual long-term leases, including the commercial, including the flats, and we're splitting them up. And this can add significant value. On this Norwich House case study, we've got 25 leases, and they're going to be kicking off £9,000 a year in rent. Peppercorn rent is usually 0.1% of the value of the flat is the annual rent. That alone is the value of 225,000 at 25 multiple, and that's going to average. You know, these kind of things go for. The 2 leases on the commercial as well adds to that, and really this is what it's all about. You know, how can we squeeze the asset for the most we can get while in keeping with the design from the interested parties and doing the right thing for the local landscape going forward. And indeed, as we're doing here, we're adding another 2 floors on top. That will take us to a total of 25 apartments. But the important thing is our base case of 13 units within the existing 3 stories supports all the funding. And we only need to sell 8 flats and everyone's out. You know, capital and interest, everyone's back out. That's really, really important to know them numbers and how you deliver those numbers. And then, you know, commercial leases, back to that, you know, buying it a 10 cap, selling at a 5 cap, or more likely a 6 cap. This is a very crude, very 30,000 square foot view of, you know, extending leases, simple asset management, re-gearing leases. So if you just think about it simply, you know, 6 months rent, 6 months lease remaining is not very valuable because you haven't got a security of tenure. You don't have an income stream there. Yeah, and you might end up having a vacant unit with negative business rates, negative insurance, negative service charges, as we talked about. So that may be worth a 7 times multiple on your rent. We're staying away from caps. We're just going multiples. But if you've got a 10-year lease, then that could be quite easily worth 14. In the case of Poundland, it's actually worth a lot more than that. But you know, that's in a nutshell. In a very simplistic level, it's lease extensions, lease regearing is what commercial is all about. But it starts with one thing: a fundamental tenant selection, essential daily spend. Are they going to be here? Or are they going to be attacked by that big cat? We've dealt with these kind of brands before, quite a few of them, and a few more as well. And here's the 2 brands in this property. And remember, the strategy is really simple: regear leases, develop apartments, use some tax strategies to really force some super profits. And the price on this one's 4.9, the GDV is 14, and projected profit is 4.5. That may be just slightly north of 5, depending on what we do with the commercial, as we're in delicate conversation just now with Poundland and CX, and it's heating up quite nicely, I may say. And hopefully in the future we'll be able to potentially come back and let you see what actually pans out from this. But it's looking really good so far. And So there's the numbers. We've done that, and let's pass back to Paul, and then I think that's it.
So what I wanted to run through next, well, firstly, what I want to do is I wanted to run a little poll, actually, because one of the things that I'm really interested in at the moment is just where people are finding their opportunities. And this will kind of all become clear in a moment, kind of why I'm doing this. But what I would like to ask you is, where are you finding success at the moment in terms of finding your own opportunities? Are you finding stuff on markets, including at auctions? You find that the best place to go for opportunities? Or are you going off market? If you're going off market, there's kind of two of those as far as we're concerned. One is via a friendly agent, and the other is via direct to vendors, in effect, direct to the owner, writing letters to those to the owners. So that's the sort of the choice of three. I just want to give you just a moment just to answer that for me, because there's a sort of a reason why this will all become clear very shortly. And you may find there's some kind of interesting results that that come off the back of that. It's kind of interesting watching all of this whiz up and down at the moment. So just give that a moment, just while everybody runs through that. We've had about 35% of people sort of running through it at the moment. We're going to give it a moment, just kind of carry on. Up to 40% now. So we've got a sort of a reasonable chunk of people that have answered that question. It's actually very interesting because this sort of ties into what happens on our deal clinic. So I'm going to just finish that poll now because we've had plenty of people kind of answer this. So what's very interesting is that we've got kind of a third, and a third split off the back of that. And the reason I think this is kind of interesting is that I ran this poll myself a couple of days ago on my LinkedIn profile. I got quite a few people that are connected with me on LinkedIn. And so this was the output that I had. So where today we're a third, and a third, over here we had 10% of people, rather than a third of people, finding stuff in auctions. We had 45% on my LinkedIn saying they found it through friendly agents, and 45% saying that they'd see it, they'd sort of find it directly themselves, going and sending their letter campaigns out. Today, on our poll, I wonder if I can actually share some of these results. I probably can at some point. I'll do that in a moment. But in essence, what was kind of interesting, I thought, was seeing where we are today in terms of the third, and the third versus where my LinkedIn profile sits. So I had 56 people voted, and off the back of those 56 people, as I say, sort of 90% are trying to go off market, with a sort of a split half and half between getting a friendly agent sending stuff through to them versus going direct to the owners. Now, the reason that I'm interested in that is that today what I want to do is I want to do a new thing here at Nimbus, and this is kind of my my child magician's kind of approach to prop tech and to site finding, in effect, which is kind of choose a card, any card kind of thing. And what I want to do is I want to do finding a deal in 90 seconds. That's what I'm going to do. So we're going to go off and we're going to find a deal that looks hopefully something similar to the stuff that Dan's been looking at. So we're going to try and find something reasonably lumpy, ideally somewhere where there's a bit of value. Trying to find a £10 million GDV in parts of the north could be quite difficult to get to that sort of level, but fingers crossed we'll find something off the back of that. And then what I want to do is I want to kind of move into something we did historically, which is kind of Nimbus story time, and sort of just talk about the building and the location, the area that it sits in, and try to bring all that to life to kind of help you understand the find, assess, and connect that Nimbus does here. Because what this allows you to do is to move into that bottom half of that. So the off market, either through agents, that bit there's kind of has its challenges, quite frankly, and sort of the scalability of all of that. And if you can go truly off market where you're generating your own opportunities, then that's where you can really drive the highest returns off the back of this. So what I want to do is I want to do that pick a card, any card. So what I would like to ask you to do is to open up the chat and to pop a location into that. Some people have kind of seen where I was going with this. So we've got Rosen who's typed in EX12. We've had Coldip type in Birmingham. We've then had Roll say Croydon, Glasgow, IP1, two lots of Croydon now. So what I might just do is I'm going to take, Sarah said Cambridge. That is, I believe, the finest university in the country is there. So we could think about Cambridge too. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Croydon, because we've had two people say that in the chat at the moment. So here we go. What we're going to do is we're going to go into, this is my version of Nimbus. And I can't spell Croydon, but please do excuse me. I do have a little bit of a cold today. So So in effect, what Nimbus is doing here is going off and finding the center of Croydon and plotting that on the map. And we haven't started the timer just yet, Dan, have we? So we'll just give me a moment to kind of explain where we are. We're in Croydon at the moment. So I'm going to just zoom out a second. I'm going to clear my search. And before I start searching, before the timer formally starts, what I want to do is just understand a little about Croydon. So for those of you who don't know Croydon, obviously it's inside the M25. I guess everybody knows that. But in essence, what I want to understand is roughly speaking where those values are. So I'm going to drop into the market down here. I'm going to look at average sales values. And so part of the reason why I chose Croydon off that list, firstly, there were 2 people out of the top 5 or so that asked for it. But equally, it's sort of at those values that Dan was talking about. So the average sales prices across this area, sort of £425 a foot, 430, 420, 445, and this sort of stuff. That's the average sale price. So I'm expecting about 20% of that. So it's probably that sort of 510 mark, which is a bit lucky actually, because that's the number that Dan quoted in Guildford at me. What's kind of useful with this is understanding the areas that it sits in effect. So we can sort of see that the southern part of Croydon down here is a bit better than sort of the northwest part of Croydon. Actually, as we kind of disappear up to the sort of far northwest, actually there's kind of a much weaker demographic up there. And so typically that would be kind of an ex-council estate or possibly even a currently a council estate. So I'm going to look for a nice swanky new scheme with a nice big GDV on it, because I'm going to try and get that into, get Dan's attention around all of that. Then I want to be looking in those good areas. You know, you don't want to put forward those nice swanky new apartments in those poor areas. That's just not going to have a nice marketplace, a nice kind of easy sell, easy letting as part of that. What's often also interesting with Croydon actually is also there's an awful lot of HMOs around there as well. So there's kind of a number of ways in which perhaps Dan could get out of this. He could be renting out 1 and 2 bedroom flats, or he could be building 4, 5, 6 bed HMOs and rent that into that HMO marketplace that is so heavy there. There is an Article 4 in place in Croydon. Of course, those of you that use the strategies 7 and 8 with us, the HMO strategies, obviously you'll know that there's Article 4 in place, and of course the ways you can sort of pick out the little areas where there are fewer HMOs. Obviously that's part of that Elite Plus strategy 7 and 8, of course. So I feel like I kind of have an understanding of this area. And I feel like we need to go and start the stopwatch down. That's what kind of I'm worried about now. So I can feel my heart going actually now. So I'm going to jump straight in while Dan starts the stopwatch, and I'm going to click on the Class MA strategy. So the Class MA strategy is highlighting all of the Class E properties across the map. And what those Class E properties are doing here, I think I might have got lucky here. If I got lucky, it's a bit small for you down this one. In essence, what this is doing is saying that here is a Class E property. It's a vehicle repair shop. It's 5,700 square feet. If I was to convert that building itself, it'd be £500 a foot. That's the kind of the average sort of new build sales value. That would give me a sort of an exit value of 2.86 million. A conversion cost of about £115 a foot, all conversion rather than new build in the case of this, which gives me £660,000 worth of conversion costs. And it's saying that off the back of paying about 8.5% for it, £8.50 rent and a 6% yield, so I'm getting a bit excited about the timings here, it would cost me £130 a foot to buy it in effect. So I could pay £750 for it, convert it for £650, be worth 2.8. Now my guess is, if I get lucky with this, which I may or may not, and I'm conscious that my 90 seconds is probably running, I've got a bit lucky there, Dan. So what I'm hoping for there is that I can go, ta-da, because we can probably put 3 stories on that, I suspect, given we've got 3 stories over here and some sort of perhaps some higher stuff. Maybe it's 2.5, 3, something like that. Which means if I'm 2.5 times 2.87, I'm probably pretty close to 9 million on the exit on the back of that. Maybe I can tweak that layer a little bit and sort of drive those values up and get you broadly speaking into that right kind of ballpark. If I can then buy that off the back of £750,000, which is kind of broadly speaking around where the existing use value is, sort of that ballpark, then I have a significant uplift that I can drive into that. So I feel like I've probably got quite lucky off the back of that. What my next job would be to do is to go and let a campaign. So I can, what I've seen here, so if I now take a breath, because I feel like I've hit my 90 seconds, I feel like I've kind of achieved a site in 90 seconds. I'm now going to take a deep breath. I might have a drink of water as well, because I feel like I'm all excited now.
Plus, we would never factor into that in terms of the value uplift to get it past that 10, the commercial aspect. You know, who wants to expand there? What's the demand kind of thing? And if there's a potential C-store or that kind of thing, they could really force some capital appreciation into schemes on the ground floor.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I suppose let's kind of take a step back now. So now I've found my site. And I guess, you know, I had a choice of various sites. The reason I kind of picked that one was that firstly, it's a nice bright color. So it's a nice bright, kind of had a nice high return on cost. And it was a big lump as well. It's sort of the biggest area I could find in the center of Croydon, in effect. That then meant that I got a good chance of there being plenty of floor space on it. Then I got a good chance of it being sort of a big enough scheme. And off the back of that, I felt kind of, I'd probably get quite lucky with the sort of numbers being, broadly speaking, where Dan wanted them to be, in effect. Now, if I just take a step back for a minute and just start looking at kind of what this kind of means, in effect. So what I'd be doing next is I'd be adding that site to my workflow, in effect. So Nimbus has gone off and it's checked, is the property in Class E use or not? And if it is in Class E, then run a bunch of checks against it. So the new Class MA strategies only apply in certain areas. They don't apply in Article 2.3 land. They don't apply to listed buildings. There's kind of a number of things they don't apply to. So Nimbus has filtered down those and removed all that kind of rubbish out of the map for you. Off the back of that, it's then run that calculation to say, broadly speaking, what's this thing worth? Broadly speaking, what would it cost to convert it? And therefore, do those numbers stack up based on what residential values are in the area, in effect? So a really kind of quick way for me to find the stuff that's the right kind of size for what Dan's looking for. Of course, the question now, though, is does that owner want to sell it? Well, there's kind of, I'm sort of slightly nervous about this because I've seen something in the information panel which kind of worries me, which is a slight challenge. We'll come on to that in a second. So the way I would do this is I would, in effect, click this little button here which says add to workflow, save that property into my workflow, click save it, put a little pin on it saying it's in my workflow now, and I can then go and use this thing called workflow, which is kind of in effect my sites. It's kind of my sort of Kanban board of opportunities, in effect. And the property that I just added in is this one at the bottom there, is one in Croydon, in effect. I can use a little download button here. That'll give me a little Excel file with the owner's name and address on it. I can just send a whole bunch of letters out, in effect. That's how I can tap into that sort of third tier of, we're not messing around with stuff on the market. We're not then even bothering about trying to generate relationships with agents and playing golf and this sort of stuff and beer on the first tee, which have been there before, and it's not a great place to be, quite frankly. And so we can then take that next level down, which is into owners of buildings where there's true opportunity, where they're kind of perhaps just starting to change their mind about whether they want to sell it or not. And of course, at that point, you can come in and say, well, actually, how about I pay you something just over that 750 price that was on the information panel? And perhaps we share a little bit of the upside. That base case still stacks. I'm kind of comfortable that I can make money off the back of that. And then if I can get my 3 stories on top, maybe I share a bit more of that with you. That's where we get a nice delayed completion off the back of it. But kind of getting you into those conversations where all of that works nicely. So that's how we do it. I suppose what's kind of then probably useful is driving around and understanding a bit more about that local marketplace. So as we start then putting information forward to say, well, what is that gross development value? How does that look? We then have a number of tools within Nimbus that we can use to help us understand that in more detail, in effect. So if I just get rid of the sort of the site finding bit of it for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just bring that search back up again and start to look at what those sales prices are around this part of Croydon, in effect. So what we have in the filter section up here, we have a little way in which we can sort of filter the maps. This is showing me a little 250-meter radius around the center of this search, which I've kind of put quite close to this property that we were looking at a moment ago. I can then jump into my comparables, click on just the residential ones. I want to see just all the residential stuff that's sold in that area, apply that into the map. So a few bits, a few little leasehold properties and a couple of little houses and stuff like that. And I can then drop those into Excel and have a very quick schedule of comps that I can then send through to Dan to say, well, here's the reason why this scheme kind of stacks up, in effect. So very quickly, there's my little list there. And actually, there's not a huge number actually in the area that I've picked, in effect, but it's sort of showing me some of these prices down here. So it's all flats, and there's kind of the list of all of those that have sold recently, in effect. A little bit lower than that. And actually, what we can do with this as well is we can go off and look at the particular sets of particulars, if you like, and really understand, well, what was the quality of that? Is it good kitchens, good bathrooms? Is it commensurate with the quality of stuff that Dan's going to be creating as part of his scheme, in effect? So that's the first thing that's kind of useful. The bit where I find stuff that's on the market kind of helpful in this example is then less so around finding stuff to buy and more about understanding what this particular building's worth. And so what we have with Nimbus now is this new commercial availability overlay, in effect. This is showing you these little sort of spots in the map here. We can sort of see we have various little icons over here. If I just clear the search itself to kind of thin the map out a little bit, and actually we might just kind of remove some of these, the Google pins, so we're not getting too kind of confused about it all. And in essence, what this is now showing me is that these different colors here tell me the kind of asset that's on the market in effect. So as we're trying to understand, well, what is the value of that office that Dan's been looking at in Guildford to try and convert? What's the true underlying value of that? So that you can work out, well, actually, what's the best case, what's the worst case, and how does that all fit together? How does that compare with what the true value of this building is? Regardless of how the fund's feeding in the background, if we're approaching what the existing use value is, and they've got this issue around money going out the door, then that's going to be really useful. If I can demonstrate that to the fund around what the quoting prices are and kind of where they might get to and this sort of stuff, then that makes that kind of whole discussion so much sort of neater and tidier in effect. And so here we have, for example, Styles Harold Williams that have got a property on the market. It's 8,000 square feet to let. And I'm going to click the details and go and see the price and this sort of stuff. What that also gives me is it gives me a contact at Styles Harold Williams that understands that local marketplace in Croydon that I can then go and get in touch with to go and give me those valuations, the aggressive one or the offensive one, as Dan called it, and the defensive one, depending on kind of where they're at. So they can bring together the local comps that support either side of that coin, depending on which coin, which side of it I want to go and push forward in effect. So hopefully all of that is helpful. Now, the thing that I said when we did this was that there was something that worried me about this particular property. Well, the thing that worried me about this particular property was that I fear somebody's beaten me to it. So Pure Space Developments Limited own this building. They've actually owned it since 2007, which is kind of interesting. So actually they haven't done anything with it yet. It's only since 2007, they haven't done anything with it. And actually what they then have is to be just sort of plotting their properties across the map. They've got a whole bunch of properties actually kind of across sort of South London in effect. What's perhaps interesting for this one, I can go, in fact, let's just have a little play with this for a minute. Let's just pull the ownership out for that and just sort of see if they're buying stuff. And let's just see whether they bought anything, whether they're sort of acquiring stuff through lockdown, whether they just sat on it doing not a lot. Thanks very much. Let's have a little look at that now. So this is the list of the properties that they've got. So over here, we can see that actually, well, they bought 32 and 34 Thornton Heath on the High Street there back in 2016. They bought 42 Denmark Hill in 2016, 2015. They've not bought anything for 5 years. So actually, they're not particularly acquisitive. One of the things that Dan mentioned is actually, let's look at the company itself. So this is the, gosh, there are a few other bits around there as well, and kind of these 2 bits around the side as well. One of the things that he mentioned is, what is that profile of company that we're interested in? My sincere guess is that this is not the right company for us to go after. We shall see. We'll see whether I get lucky or not. So down here, what we can see, this is the company's house entry for this particular company. So I can see that, there's the name of the company. I can see no prizes for guessing that they're a development company, SIP code 41100, of course. Or we could have a look at see the people. So am I going to get lucky with perhaps well, in fact, it looks like it might have been a sort of a brothers or something like that, or brothers and sisters, whatever, that own it. It's actually a single person, a guy called Yusuf Gadit that owns this, born in 1972. So I've probably got a little bit unlucky here because 1972 makes him 48, 49, I think, if my math serves me correctly. And I'm applying it based on my own age and adding a few numbers. So my guess is that that's probably not the most exciting of companies, frankly. So I didn't get particularly lucky on that. Perhaps what might be interesting though is sort of perhaps have a little look at whether there's anything kind of interesting around here. So micro company accounts, is there anything in the accounts that they suddenly start trading badly? Is there anything in here that might affect things? Well, actually, they've gone from fixed assets of 3.5 million to 8.75, which is kind of quite interesting. It's quite a big old uplift in terms of value. I'm not quite sure whether that's just a revaluation on that balance sheet or not. That seems like a big uplift. And of course, there's no kind of increase of the creditors or anything like that, or no increase in creditors to kind of to they've gone out and bought stuff or anything like that. So kind of interesting to see kind of what that looks like. I'm not quite sure how they've managed to achieve that, quite frankly, but very interesting in terms of that huge growth and that sort of doubling in terms of the asset value off the back of that. A couple of employees, same as it was before. So I guess the other thing is kind of is that property in charge, I guess, could be interesting. So they've got an assignment of rental income here. They've got Thornton Heath has a charge in place with Lend Invest, 34 as well. So that's the same. Habib Bank, it's kind of interesting. I've not heard of a lot of these banks they're borrowing against here. And again, Habib Bank again out in Zurich, there's lending against the other one as well, which kind of interesting sort of the debt structure. I'm not. I don't know if you heard of them, Dan. I've not heard of them as a sort of local bank lending in the
Yeah,
UK.
they're in Glasgow as well, but
Okay.
they're not very well known. But obviously, Lend Invest are quite well known in the development
Mm,
space. Yeah,
yeah,
but
sure.
yeah, interesting. What's
Yeah.
really interesting on the back of that is the fact that you got an 8 million asset value, 2 employees, the power of property. You can
Mm,
be lean, agile, and do some serious stuff. Yeah, it's great.
fabulous. So I suppose some of the interesting things stuff then as well, kind of around sort of what's on the site and this sort of stuff. There's kind of further information around that particular property. I suppose just sort of digging through and seeing if there's anything else kind of on that site that kind of could be interesting really. So you've got kind of a bunch of parking, you've got a vehicle repair shop at the back, and that's kind of where these properties have been brought back in effect. So kind of quite interesting to understand how that site lays out in effect. And I say the way we then kind of drive into those truly off market, the opportunities that are direct to vendor in effect, is to simply go through that list, to pick out those sites, send your workflow, send your letters out, and off you go. Very, very simple indeed. For those of you that want to think about that in a bit more detail, we do have a webinar coming up tomorrow where myself and my brother are running through the benefits and drawbacks of the 3 different types of on market, if you like. So for me, whether it's on market or off market, kind of 1 type of on market and 2 types of off market, and kind of how you can unlock both of those, and applying that then through to the new Class MA opportunities that are out there at the moment. So hopefully that's kind of helpful. I suppose if anybody's interested in having a go at the platform itself, this is typically the journey that most people kind of take with us. You can take a 14-day free trial of our elite platform. And in fact, I'll pop a link into the chat in a moment to take you through, and you can arrange a call with someone to go and get you booked in for that. So you have a 14-day free trial with us. Then typically what we'd recommend is you have a one-to-one demonstration. It's done over Zoom or over Teams, and you sort of have someone kind of guide you through and show you the stuff you should be using as part of that. Often people will sign up to the Elite platform, and actually then you may well decide you want to upgrade to the Elite Plus, and that's the button that I click to overlay the Class MA PD rights and this sort of stuff. We have within that Elite platform, the price for that on an annual basis is £1,440. You get 12 months access to the Elite platform. You get one-to-one support with our customer success team here. You have access to our weekly webinars, just like the one we've been on today. And we have a 3-part training series that's actually worth £500 in its own right, frankly. At the moment, we have a commercial conversions bundle that bundles together the strategy I showed you a moment ago, this Class MA strategy. It also bundles together the Class ZA, so that's strategy number 1. This is kind of airspace above commercial properties. Strategy number 4, which is the shops with uppers, the Class G PD rights that you can kind of convert 2 flats above a shop. Strategy number 5, which is the low-value commercial buildings in residential areas, in effect, baking in a sort of a residential feel to those properties, and then checking that they would convert and removing any kind of planning constraints around those particular properties. What I'm going to do is just jump into my notes here, and I'm going to pop a link into chat. If anybody would like to take us up on looking at the Elite platform, I'm going to just drop a quick note into the chat here, which will give you a bit.ly link, which will take you through to a website where you can book a call with a lady in the office called Jodie, who will be able to kind of set you up with the various things that you may want to do in terms of that journey through with us. Let me jump on, and then Dan, I suppose if anybody was interested in support from you, or kind of any things that you can kind of do, how can you help?
Let me just quickly share the screen again. It won't take long, and I'll just tell you what we've got coming up. We've done something special for Paul's customers, and so it all starts with this. If you want to stop inflation eroding your capital, start your income machine, and really scale that into a portfolio of passive income streams, that's what we are all about. We help our club members do this. Passive guide, business owners, professionals, SaaS pension trustees, whoever, if you've got no time, you still want to grow your capital, because you need to grow your capital. Because if you don't learn to create money in your sleep, you're kind of work until you die. We do it for you in the club. It's a new thing that club members have asked for. So in January, we started our kind of development of our own private club members kind of crowdfunding platform. after doing 6 months of research on compliance. My goodness, that was fun. but we help people do this, create portfolios of passive income done for you and or done with you. How we work is we do all the work. You get involved in the creation of the last one we did. Basically it's 10% returns, 15% over the term, but 10% annualized. And there's also a learn part of this strategy where you get involved in the mastermind as well on how you do these kind of deals. We do a deep dive on these all the time, and we collect the rent. You get paid. As simple as that. It's really pretty straightforward. Here's one we've done before that you could have potentially invested in. It was 1.25 to 4.9 val. This is pure commercial. This one. Here's when it's finished. Still not a pretty looking building, but it's got 5 blue chip brands kicking off £220,000 rent, which is quite nice. The great thing about this, actually, see the little beach here on the left, 10,000 of that 220k is the beach, and there's no property there. And that's a 35-year lease with no breaks to the government. So not bad. This one here is an ugly thing into, I suppose, a nice thing. This is the kind of thing that we'll be bringing for people, business owners, professionals with no time to, create additional income stream by getting involved in these kind of projects. We kind of do the deals so you don't have to. This one's coming up in Q4 actually. It's quite a chunky one, 56 apartments, 20,000 square foot of commercial. And this is it down the bottom. It looks like some kind of glass house. And it's going to be this is going to be one of our first community-based kind of projects. We're looking forward to this, but it's coming up in Q4. This is in Q4. We're bringing this to the club, allowing people to create another passive income stream. This is coming up in Q1. This one we own. Just got planning permission on it. This one we own is unencumbered as well. We just got a pre-app approved, and then we just got outline planning permission on this as well. And we're going for full planning in October. This one costs 120, not for that building there, one of the ugly buildings I showed you before, but this is going to be the brand new 70 PBSAs, purpose-built student accommodation, GDV about 8 million. But the great thing about this is the location. Right next door is the Students' Union. Across the road, the whole block is a university. So it's a great location. 5 minutes walk to a train station, 5 minutes to Glasgow. So awesome location. But if you're more of a kind of active investor and you want to kind of do your own deals, then we got you as well, because this is kind of what happens on some of our calls. This is myself here on the left, kind of strategist, our head architect, town planner David Kemp, Alex Impey, head deal analyst, and we help you do better deals, make less mistakes, create more hedging, more de-risking into your projects. This is kind of what we do. We've got a full deal team that we've taken a lot of time pulling together. I know my solicitor for 20 years. He's done deals in the billions himself. I've not, just over 100 million. But we've got a world-class team here. That if you're into doing deals, then you don't need to hunt about, because these are the guys we use, and these are the guys that help in the club, and these are the guys that we refer you to if you need anything. We help with kind of feasibilities, live, doing the numbers, maximum bid price kind of thing on projects. This is real life. It's not a course. It's kind of real life, helping you create passive income streams, and then help you at some point when you're comfortable or you want to do your own deal, maybe you've got the time, you don't want to do your own deal. We help both active and passive investors. We've got a digital vault with trainings in there, and if you're in the private members club, you get access to that. One of the courses, for example, Commercial Property Accelerator, we sold for 5k plus VAT, when it was done. We've got live deal clinics happening, live masterclass, and the mastermind is if you're in the Earn and Learn program. You've invested in one of the projects. If you want to find out more, we're going to do a live broadcast on Saturday, pretty relaxed affair. It's Saturday. If you just get your phone out and scan that QR code, you'll get a link to the Zoom invite, and where we'll tell you a little bit more about the club, a little bit how you can grow your capital, how you can create multiple passive income streams while you learn on the job as well. So the club is already about getting you from a cost to profit as fast as possible, with creating an income stream that's basically based on us hunting, securing, developing low value commercial into high performance assets. That's what it's all about. That's what we do in a nutshell. And who we do it for? Business owners, professionals, SaaS pension trustees, people with no time or no experience. And if you've got money sitting in your bank, number one, you got to do is stop that inflation eroding your capital. You got to start that income machine and then scale into passive income portfolio. That's what we do. If it's if it's of interest, scan the QR code. We'll see you on Saturday. Look forward to it.
Absolutely. So the various webinars. So Dan's got a webinar on Saturday, which is 10 o'clock in the morning. The link to that is also in the chat. Just pop that in. Myself, I've got a webinar tomorrow with my brother, believe it or not. Kind of always fun and games when there's too many chiefs in that webinar. So always going to be interesting. And that's at 2 o'clock tomorrow. If anybody would like to come and join us there, we're going to be looking at the new class MA, and we're also going to look at the benefits of truly off market over kind of off market with agents and on market, and help to kind of drive some understanding as to why those different sort of numbers are so interesting for us in terms of where the surveys come back from, obviously. So I suppose what we now have, just a very short period of time, we've perhaps gone on a bit more than we wanted to in terms of the content we want to cover across today. We have just a few more minutes left, so perhaps what I could suggest we do is, if anyone would like to ask us a question directly, then if you go onto your kind of control panel for Zoom, there's a button there that says raise hand. If you want to raise your hand, then what we'll do is we'll ask you to come up here and we'll ask you to unmute your microphones. You can ask us a question live, and we'll answer that as we are here. So the first person to do that was Michael Foti. Let's just see if we can get you to unmute yourself, Michael. Let's see if Michael can do that. Doesn't look like it. Jason was next. Let's see if we can get Jason to unmute himself. Hi, hello. Jason.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, absolutely. How you doing?
Yeah, good. Question for Dan. Dan, I'm very interested about the permitted development rights, which enable you to add 2 stories. I think is the deal, subject to the overall height restrictions. Just roughly, what's the cost per square foot to put a prefabricated, I assume that'd be a prefabricated structure which is craned onto it. Just roughly, what would one be thinking in terms of overall cost per square foot for that structure, weather type?
Yeah, for us, we're at the 165 on that one, to be honest, and we regularly get our costings updated by the QS. We've had price inflation on concrete, steel, timber, the whole thing. But there's enough margin to take that. It's not an issue. You're selling it at 510. You're not paying anything for the uppers. It helps, obviously. So we're at 165. It's not prefabricated. This is a steel construction on top, and it's very much being able to do it with PD, and then you get to the planning stumbling blocks, and then you get to the structural integrity stumbling blocks. There's a lot involved in this, and there's a lot of toing and froing to finally get your final design that's actually deliverable, and that's the key phrase there, because not all of what we wanted to do was deliverable, because we had a structural rigidity issue that if we didn't do certain reinforcing, we could do this other thing. So we restricted ourselves to 25 apartments, and but it's really important that as we talked about engaging your professionals earlier, what is actually 100% deliverable, and then what's the kind of icing on the cake, and is the rub worth a squeeze? Do you actually want to go for that? Do you just want to get in, get out on the easy stuff? There's a good kind of question to ask yourself as well. Don't always go for the hard stuff. The big, sometimes an easy win's the best win. So it really depends on yourself. I definitely wouldn't do this. If it's your first time, get somebody around you that's got experience. There's a lot going on. It's the commerciality, the tax structuring, the design, the public interfacing component. This is a PR exercise from start to finish. Interested parties gathering in, playing that game, which is interesting and fun. I love it, to be honest. It's been a blast, and it's really hopefully that helps answer your question. But we're at 165, not prefabricated steel and timber. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Okay, Jason. Fabulous. Thank you, Jason. Let's see if we can get Yogesh up. You've got a question as well. Let's see if we can get you to unmute yourself. Yogesh is going to ask you to unmute. Hi, Yogesh, how you doing?
Hi Dan. Hi Paul. Really good talk.
Hello.
Thank you.
Question, Dan, for Dan, really. you said that we can use your power team, I guess, to help us with our own deals. Is that like a paid for service? I was just wondering a bit more how we can access them because you've got a great power team there.
It's in two ways, to be honest. Yogesh, our power team, our deal team, come into the club to do presentations to help people out. For example, 2 weeks ago we had a live deal clinic. What is a live deal clinic? Somebody pings in a deal or 2 or 3 deals, usually 2 max. The architect was there, head town planner was there. Next month the solicitor's on, valuation expert comes on as well. So the number one, they help with going through real life deals and giving insight on that. Number 2, they help by doing masterclasses now and again. And then number 3, obviously, if you don't have a valuation expert, if you don't have a capital allowances guy, a tax guy, a solicitor, I'll introduce you to them. Then whatever you do with them is obviously on a page, and you need to negotiate that with them direct. But they're all here to give anyone in the club, club price kind of thing.
Thank you very much. It's really helpful. Thanks.
Cool.
And then we have another one from Siji. See if we can get Siji on. Hi, Siji.
Hi, Dan. Hi, Paul. Thanks very much. Great.
Have I pronounced your name correctly? Apologies.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. Great talk. Really appreciate it. Quick question from me, and it's following on from a question, two questions ago. What do you sort of use as a rough indicative figure for the actual building when it comes to permitted development conversion from office to resi?
Well, simply, if you use Nimbus, it's all kind of built in for you. And I think, Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, you're in the kind of £100 range, £100 a foot for a conversion, existing conversion.
Yeah. In fact, I have a prop. I'm gonna have to move my computer, so apologies, but I have a prop that is going to be driving the new. This shouldn't be doing. I shouldn't be doing this. Look at this. This is terrible. This is terrible. But my new prop that's actually being used to hold my computer up is this. And the reason I show that is A, because it's ridiculous that I'm now moving my computer around like this, but B, there's some really interesting stuff in it around kind of how you sort of split the price up in effect. And back in the days when we were doing lots of kind of commercial conversions ourselves, we had a QS that kind of used this really heavily, and in essence kind of was assigning, are we converting? Are we change the windows? Are we change the roof? Are we, kind of what are we doing with it, the fabric of the building and this sort of stuff, and then applying percentages based on what the amount that Spawn was applying. And what we ended up doing is going through a whole load of work to kind of dig through into what that price might be, and the answer was always 2/3 to 3/4 of new build. And so whilst we did all that kind of work to say, well, actually in the case of this, if this, we found that a really good starting point that's just taking 2/3 of new build, frankly. So on our elite plus strategies, we're sort of applying a sort of a regional build cost in effect, anywhere from sort of 150 a foot in sort of the weaker parts of the world, of the UK, in effect, kind of some of those sort of lower priced areas. The build costs are a little bit cheaper down there. When you sort of then move into London, then typically that build cost starts with a 2 for new build, and we're then taking 2/3 of that as our build cost.
Okay. What was your book that you were just sharing? What was that book called? It
was Spawn's price book.
Now there's some bedtime reading. Right?
Absolutely.
Or alternatively, bring a QS on early.
You could just do that as well. That's the other option.
Absolutely. You don't want to get that bit wrong, because a lot of people underestimate what costs are, and then costs creep up as you negotiate, as your delayed completion kicks in, as you build. So cost is always going kind of in one direction.
Sure. Fabulous. Let me just check with anybody else has raised hands. I think that's kind of covered everybody that raised their hands. So and look at that, we've finished just on time, Dan, as well. Amazing. So let me
it's quite impressive.
Yes, quite. Who would have thought it? So really, I suppose all that's kind of left for me is firstly to thank you, Dan, for your time today. Thank you for your great presentation. Much appreciated.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. I always enjoy it, having a chat with yourself, buddy, and everyone else that's on the call. So thanks for everybody for coming on the call, and thanks for Paul.
Absolutely. And finally, thank you to you all for watching. Been good fun. Hopefully you found it helpful. I've been Paul Davis. We've been Nimbus Maps. We'll look forward to seeing you again soon. All the best. Bye for now.
Bye.